Hey y'all, how's it going? Good? Who is the sunflower? Who is? Good question, Justin. Welcome. We are so glad that you've decided to join us once again. I know it's been like cold in winter. I feel like I'm really getting into the cozy vibes, trying to keep warm. Hope y'all are doing well and warm in your homes. My name is Elise. I work in the Office of Student Involvement, and we are so excited again that you've chosen to join us tonight for the We Are Falcons Value Series, a focus on race. This series takes a deeper look at our campus values and hopes to educate, reflect, and bring each value word to life. This year, we're focusing on the value word of inclusivity and more crucially, race and anti-racism. We're so glad that you've chosen to join us tonight. We are welcoming back Justin Jones-Fosu, who was here a couple weeks ago. If you didn't catch him that like a few weeks ago, no worries, but he is back and he is so amazing. I'm so excited to learn more, to engage more. And it's so, the dancing, I'm just saying, the dancing, the vibes are up there. If you want to turn your screen on, that feels cool to you, please do. I miss people's faces. It's fun to see your faces in your homes, and it's just like good to be with people from apart. So if that feels cool to you, please do that. I know with our We Are Falcons Value Series, there's a custom giveaway item with each of these events. Tonight's item is, I don't have them with me. They're currently in the wash because I wore them this weekend, but the We Are Falcons Value Series custom 2020 white socks. So we've done a black sock, we've done a red sock. This year is white. The only way to get it is to come to this event. So you currently will be getting those. At the end of tonight's talk, we will have a link for you to have information on how to get those socks. So don't worry quite yet. That'll be in the chat at the end. On to tonight's guest. I also want to share that student involvement is in collaboration with this event. So the Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Office and New Student and Family Programs have all come together to bring the one and only Justin Jones-Fosu. So let's learn a little bit about him. Justin Jones-Fosu is a husband, daddy, social entrepreneur, author, and speaker, in that order, who does the laundry and other household projects. He also happens to speak 60 to 70 times a year for corporations, associations, and educational institutions in the US. He's the founder and CEO of Work Meaningful, which is a company that is on a mission to help people bring meaning to their work every day while helping leaders of organizations create engaged and meaningful workplaces. Justin's background is in human resources development, and he obtained his MBA specializing in leadership and organizational change. He's gained valuable leadership experience with these three Fortune 500 companies. Justin was named as one of Ebony Magazine's top 30 young leaders on the rise. He's the author of 3 books and recently launched Your Why Matters Now: How Some Achieve More and Others Don't. If you only remember one thing about Justin, it's that he's a husband and loves being a daddy of 2 high energy children. He believes that these are more important than any of his accomplishments, recognition, or accolades. So get ready for a high energy presentation where you'll be educated, entertained, inspired, but most importantly, challenged to take action. Please join me in giving another virtual welcome back. Use the reactions on Zoom if you want. I think those are fun. To Justin Jones-Fosu.
Hey. Oh, come on. Hey, we're going to do part 2. This is that ice cold, but just like put your hands go like this. Yep, even on Zoom. Okay, I see you little bits with the hand. Darling, living it up in the city. I got Chuck's song, gotta say my song. I got it. I'm so pretty. Come on, I'm too hot. So police and the fireman, I'm too hot. Dragon Ball be tiny man, I'm too hot. Say my name, you know who I am, I'm too hot. Turn down, break it down. Girl, essential. All right. It is so good to be here with you all again. I'm super pumped. We're gonna have a really good time, just engaging, continuing to connect. And yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So what I wanna do is, as a reminder for you all, virtual doesn't have to be virtually boring. And so as we engage, I definitely want us to continue to do the TWG, which stands for That Was Good. And so let's do something like Elise just did an amazing bomb job with the introduction and killing it. Let me see some TWGs in the chat. Okay. Yeah, they think you did. They think you the sunflower, Elise. Okay, all right. Awesome. So this is awesome. So I want to say thank you so much for those who, if you are on part one, I want you to type into the chat, I'm back. If you were a part of part one, type into the chat, I'm back. All right, we got some, we back. Okay, Shelly. Okay, Grace. Let's go, Peyton. All right, come on, let's go, Kayla, Sarah. Let's go, let's go, let's go, Tiffany. Okay, I see y'all. All right, Crystal back. Okay, all right. So we're gonna engage for those who weren't on part one. We'll have the recording so you can be able to go back and watch that and engage and listen to it. We had a really good time. And just as a quick recap, we talked about what diversity is and what diversity is not. That diversity is not just the big three that we talk about in terms of race, gender, and sexuality. That diversity is just at a simplest form difference. That every single one of us, whether we come from the same place, look very similar, are still very different. And that all of us are part of the conversation. We jumped in to talk about the 4 social styles in terms of expressives, drivers, amiables, and analytics, and how that's a macro way to look at diversity and inclusion. But we have to not just stop at macro, but how do we value the micro? We also engage that diversity is not agreement, right? That I'm not going to walk around hand singing "Kumbaya, diversity," right? Or that's not real diversity. Real diversity is when I can disagree with you, yet still respect you, still value, vehemently disagree with your ideology, but passionately pursue your humanity. Right? Well, we also talked about the circles of grace, which kind of led us to that point. And the circles of grace pretty much is just how we tend to give, who we tend to give the most grace to in terms of ourselves, family members, friends, people like us, people like those that we love, and then we have everyone else's. And I challenge us to think about how do we enlarge our circles with meaningful relationships and exposure. And so the big challenge I gave each and every single one of us was the 6-month challenge. And that's simply every 6 months, I go to an event, I experience something, or I engage with someone, either which I disagree or I don't know a lot about. A very practical tool, a way to move diversity and inclusion from our head to our hearts. And so we're about to dive into part 2. The last piece is, remember, life is messy. People are messier. And we talk about just the stories that we create for people and how we shouldn't take the exit, but that we should engage each and every single person. And so what I want to do is I want to give you some ways to kind of think about that, but I want to start off with a unique way. And I want to ask you, when you see this image, tell me what you see. Tell me what you see. When you see this image, what do you see? Type into the chat. What do you see when you look at this image? What do you see? All right. Hit vibes. Okay. My dad. Thank you, Kara. Someone who wants to party. You're welcome, Matt. That's a little bit tacky. What if I told you that's my house? You call my house tacky? No, college. Welcome, Matt. A frat house. FedEx. Stay lit. Someone who wants something from you. I love how a college man welcoming to my home. Thank you, Grace. Right? I love how each and every single one of you sees something completely different. Right now, the interesting thing for this image is, like, I love asking really smart people like you all this. Right? You have to bring something up to enter. Okay, I love that. Right? And I'm gonna butcher your name, but I'm gonna try my best. Arjambala. Okay, that's my best attempt. Please forgive me if I didn't get it right. Okay, all right. But one of the things that I love is asking really smart people like you all this question, because I get answers like, oh, it's symmetrical, the font differences, and then the people who are like really handy, they're like, the bricklaying is amazing, and you get the people who love the earth, like, oh, the vegetation just right on the side is so awesome. And then I get the real deep people like, oh, Justin, I see the door. Why does the door have to be white? Why can't it be black, brown, or rainbow, right? And yes, really deep. Well, one of the things that's interesting to me is, let me ask you, and I want you to type into the chat, what do you notice about this door? What do you notice about this door? Arjun. Thank you, Arjun Bala. Appreciate that. It's closed, right? Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. It's closed. Like, the door is closed. There's a welcome mat, but the door is closed. And I know what each and every single one of you are saying. You're like, but Justin, I don't want bugs in my house either. And yes, this is true. But one of the things is, I realize that there is a vast difference between being welcoming and inviting. There's a difference, right? Now, I'm gonna give you the semantics perspective. Welcoming, if I can put it this way, imagine somebody comes to your room, right? And they brought root beer, root beer, because you're not over 21. Okay, right. And so they brought root beer, and they came to your room, and they like, you sent out this mass message and said, everybody's welcome. Just bring beer, root beer, right? And so like you showed up to somebody's house, like you had your little root beer in hand. But I don't know if hopefully you don't walk like that to somebody's house, because they would actually may ask you to leave. But but you walked up like and right, and you came, you had the beer, they opened the door, and they're like, oh, thanks for the root beer. They grabbed root beer, and then they closed the door. And as they closed the door, you saw everybody else inside, and you're like, wait a minute, but why didn't you invite me in? And my friends, this is some of the challenges that we experience, not only on college campuses, but in society, is that there's a difference between being welcoming and inviting. And welcoming is not a bad thing, right? Being welcome is not a bad thing. But when you're welcoming, a person will shake your hand, will smile with you, but there's an expectation, whether consciously or subconsciously, for you to go back to your circles and for them to go back to theirs, right? But that's the interesting thing, is that when you're inviting, there's a humility that's there, that's humble enough to invite you into their circles, invite you in, but also humble enough to be invitable into your circles. And my friends, what I feel like we have to try our best to do is to not just be welcoming, because welcoming is super comfortable. Because we can be super welcoming, especially because it's great. We're like, yes, I love people who are different and all these kind of things, but yet then we don't have a close relationship. We don't connect with people. We don't enlarge our circles. And so welcoming says something like this: I'm glad you're here. That's welcoming. But inviting says, I'm glad we're here. You see the subtle difference? And that's the difference. If you've ever struggled with what the real difference is between diversity and inclusion, at its simplest form, and I know I'm simplifying it, but diversity at simplest form is being welcoming. I'm glad you're here. Inviting is being inclusive, and it's I'm glad we're here. And I ask you simply, what are your inviting behaviors? What are your inviting behaviors? Right? What are the behaviors that communicate that someone is able to be invited into your circles, and or you're invitable to others? So I want you to type into the chat, what are some inviting behaviors that you think that you and others show or can show to show someone else that they're invited in and not simply just welcome? What are those inviting behaviors? All right. Awesome. That was swag, bro. Appreciate that. You're welcome. And man, I gotta share. Okay. Hug, smiling faces, root beer. Yep, smiling, just body language, smiling, open door and smile. Yeah, eye contact when talking to him. Yes, absolutely. Like these are all really basic. Let me see if I can put this. Boom. Oh, that's even better. Okay. These are all some really basic smiling people, not currently with masks, right? Like I love that the smile, people have the mask on, like, but you can't really see their smile, but you're like, you get to smile with your eyes. Smile with your eyes. What's America's Next Top Model? Okay. But one of the things that I love is that we have inviting behaviors, and sometimes these inviting behaviors go beyond. So like kind of pre-COVID, and for some of us even right now, it could be something like inviting someone to go grab something to eat. Right? It could be inviting someone to go grab coffee. For some, over Zoom, it could be just taking and saying, hey, you know what, Dustin, I'm going to take this challenge, right? I'm going to try once a week or just once a month and try to engage with somebody, get somebody on Zoom, somebody who might be a part of our class, somebody who might be different, somebody, whatever, and just say, hey, like, let's just take the time to get to know each other. Like those are inviting behaviors. Simon Sinek wrote a book called Never Eat Alone. And one of the things in the book about Never Eat Alone is that we try and challenge ourselves to do things that allow us to engage with other people. And so I simply ask you to think about things that you can practically do to enlarge your circles, and not just to invite others in, but what are some things that you can do to be invitable? To be invitable, right? Because it's not just about, hey, you can come where I am. But sometimes it's challenging ourselves to go where other people are. And some of that is in what we talked about, the 6-month challenge, right? It's going to an experience. It's engaging with a group of people that, it may be different than you, right? Or it may be going to, say, a conference on those with disability, or going and hearing about social justice issues that are happening specifically around racial inequities. Like it could be something that might be out of the norm for you, but when you go in just to learn and to experience something, it's super helpful. And one of the things that I challenge myself to do is even in learning, one of my big passion points is gender equity in the workplace. And so as I go into those spaces and learn, I am invitable to be able to just to hear and engage. But you know why some of us we won't enlarge our circles and be more inviting with others? One of those reasons is because we're afraid we're going to do or say something stupid. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to type in me, M-E, if you've ever done or said something stupid. Type in me, M-E, right? That's good, right? Okay. Oh, yeah. Some of us are like me, 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 right? And this is true, like Grace. Like we've all done and said something stupid. And for those of you who didn't type in me, then you just did something stupid because we all have done or said something stupid. Like my kids will tell you I do a whole bunch of things that are stupid. Now, I gotta tell you a story. This is the part I call stupid stuff smart people say, right? And one of the things that many years ago when I first started speaking, I joined an agency. And so I was a part of this agency. And one of the things being part of this agency is that some of my mentors were there and we were having this big kind of meeting to get to know you. And so I came and I had to speak, right? And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do my best to speak, right? So I spoke, I tried to give good energy, good research. And at the end, I had people lined up there. It was like, Justin, oh my gosh, this is a really good presentation. Loved your energy, loved your content. And there's one lady, Cindy, who she came up at the end and she was like, Justin, I really, really just enjoyed your presentation. She's like, do you mind if I give you some constructive feedback? And I'm like, yeah, I want to grow. I want to get better. Like, please help me. And she was like, Justin, I know this probably wasn't your intent, but there were several times during the presentation where in the same sentence you referred to men as men, but then women as girls. She was like, I just want you to know, even though that wasn't your intent, how that can come across to some. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know I was doing that. And it hit me so hard in the core of my heart that even if I'm in circles of those who identify as men and I hear the same thing, right? I gently jump in and say, politely say, oh, women, right? I'm not talking about when we're talking about guys and ladies or girls and boys, but I was clearly talking about men and women, but instead of referring them to women, I referred to them as girls. Now, I want to ask you because there's two amazing things that she did that allowed me to hear her in a unique and different way. And so I want to ask you, what's the first thing that she did? What's the first thing that she did? And it's not the compliment. It's not the sandwich method. Like, Justin, I like your shirt. Your hair looks horrible, but your pants are nice. And not the sandwich method. But what was the first thing that she did? Right? Yes, absolutely, Sarah. Right? Yes, Evan. Yes, 100%. Right? She asked, could she give me feedback? And what's the second thing that she did? What's the second thing? This is good, Abby. Yep, she said something. Yep, it's good, Grace. Asked if she could feedback. What's the second thing she did? Y'all are on it today. Y'all are on it. She nicely gave it. Yes. How did she nicely give it? Yeah. She gave it politely. Yeah, absolutely, Elizabeth. Yes, absolutely, Grace. She said it wasn't your intention. Yes, Evan. Right. Absolutely. Right. Is that she assumed I had positive intent. She didn't come at me like, you misogynist pig. You hate the very womb who bore you. Like she didn't come at me like that, right? She first asked, could she give me feedback? And the second thing she did is she assumed I had positive intent. Now, let me give you a secret. If you ever want somebody's defensive walls to come up immediately, do these two things. Don't ask to give them feedback and assume they meant the absolute worst. I promise you, if you do those two things, people will automatically get defensive. Even for those of you who are in relationships, like if like who's in a relationship like now, some of y'all like, one second, let me check real quick. Oh, we're good, right? But like it's those of you like, oh, that's all it takes. Well, let me do that, right? No, right? But when you're talking and engaging with someone, I loved how Cindy approached me. She taught me something that day. Like I learned so much in how she approached me. Because even if somebody had negative intentions, even if I thought 99% of what they were saying was intended to be bad, my soft response, my polite response doesn't feed into the potential narrative. See, I have a friend, the former skinhead, and one of the things that he talked about, he's like, Justin, he was like, oh, he's being honest. Like, I was asking, like, hey, how did things transition? How did you shift? How did you change? And he was like, Justin, I loved when people came at me all violently and came at me calling me names. He's like, that actually fed me. He's like, the thing that challenged me the most, and he's like, some of these people never knew this, was the people that talked to me just as a human being. Even when I didn't give them dignity, that they gave me dignity, especially those who are different. And one of the things that I loved, skinhead is someone who had racist ideology. They normally you saw them, shaved head, and had some ties to Nazism and things like that. So there's a lot of different variations of that, but that's generally what a skinhead is, right? And so there was a really big thing for a while. There's still you have some pockets of that somewhere, in some places, but one of the things that he talks about just being someone who used to be a skinhead was the people who politely engaged him. That even though they may have never known, they planted seeds where they took the time just to listen, to hear him, and didn't respond in the way that he gave it. So some of you may be wondering, well, Justin, can I come back with people? I'm gonna tell them who they are, I'm gonna tell them what they need to know. Truth be told, that really just fuels people. And so when we are able to engage people, first asking to give them feedback, and second, assuming they meant the best, we're able to encounter and communicate with people in ways that go beyond that specific moment. Now there's two things at play, and we normally don't talk about these two things. One thing we always talk about, but this other piece we don't. And this is one thing, is just because I had good intentions doesn't mean that it always will translate to positive impact, right? Impact and intent. I could have had the best of intent, but sometimes the best of intent can translate to negative impact. And I have to be humble enough to hear the journey and stories of other people and collect feedback and hear maybe I'm doing something that's I'm unknowingly causing damage and harm. Right? I may do a microaggression and be like, oh my gosh, I just love your hair, and just touching people's hair. Don't touch people's hair unless they give you permission, right? Especially mine. Really, really challenging. But like one of the things is like I may do and say something that's stupid, right? And so one of the things I have to do is just I may have had good intent, but I have to be careful not to get so defensive because I was challenged on it. But on the other side, which we sometimes don't talk a lot about, but is super necessary and helpful as well, is just because I received a negative impact doesn't mean that person had a negative intent all the time. And I have to be humble enough to hear their stories as well, and to hear and give them the same desire I would want done for me. And that's why I believe this quote to be so true, is that we tend to judge ourselves by our intent, while we judge others by their impact. Have you noticed that to be true? When we do something to someone else, we say, oh, that's not what I meant. But when someone does something to us, we say, you know how you made me feel? And that's the challenge, is that we have to challenge ourselves and consistently grow and help each other to develop and grow. Y'all, I'm just saying there's no one right way to go about this, but I'm not a vengeance dude. I'm a progress person. I want people to right, like there's sometimes that just because I had good intent doesn't excuse the horrible impact that it caused. And sometimes there's price to be paid, sometimes there's penalties, sometimes there's punitive things that are attached to that. And I hope that I can take that as a learning lesson. But on the other side, I'm also not a vengeance dude where I want somebody, you're gonna pay. I really want people to grow. I want people to change. I want people to be positively impacted and to become better people. And sometimes it means I want somebody to entreat me in the way that when I made a mistake, when I said something stupid, when I did something stupid, I want to treat them in the way that I would want to be treated as well. I can give you a great example of this. So in the beginning of my presentations, probably, oh man, many years ago, one of the things that I would do when one of my presentations was about kind of your why matters now. And I was talking about being chased by a dog. And I asked people, have you ever been chased by a dog before? And people are like, yeah. And I think there's 3 different types of dogs, right? And there's like this one really cute dog, and they're like, you bad and bougie, right? Like this really cute dog, right? And it's just really, I showed an image of a cute dog. Then I was like, this really smart dog. And I showed this image with a dog with glasses. Then I said, and then there's this really, really mean dog. And I showed an image of a pit bull. And I had a young lady that sent me an email after my presentation. I love this email where she said, Justin, she was like, I really enjoyed your presentation. She was like, hey, if you allow me to give you some feedback. Now, couldn't consent to that at that point because she was an email, but she said, you allow me to give me some feedback. She was like, hey, normally pit bulls are used and shown with a negative stereotype. And it feeds into the stereotype that many people have about pit bulls. And I think that you're just reinforcing a really negative stereotype about pit bulls, that they're bad and evil and mean and angry and all these kind of things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had never even thought about that. But it was her approach to me that allowed me to shift and say, and I typed in and sent a message back. Now, I'm gonna be honest. Initially, I got a little defensive. I was like, who are you talking to? Like, I'm the one presenting and all this kind of stuff, but I got over myself. And I typed her an email back and said, first of all, thank you so much for your really kind email. I loved how you approached it. This was a master class in how to approach somebody who might be doing something that's different or that's off. And I said, is there another image that you would recommend? And she said, absolutely. All right. And one of the things that she shared was, hey, what about the silly dog contest or the ugliest face dog contest? It's like, what if you show that image, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a really good thing. So people actually get a kick out of it. They laugh. They're like, oh my gosh, that's funny. But it doesn't reinforce the negative stereotypes that pit bulls may have, right? And we have proud owners like Sarah. Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. That these things exist. And so I wanted to challenge that, but it was how she approached me. Y'all, let me be 100%. We call it in my neighborhood, we call it, let me be 100 with you, right? I would keep it 100. You will never, ever be free from making or doing stupid stuff, even as smart people. I see a lot of people try by confining themselves, as we talked the last time, into our circles of comfort. But when we go out there, when we engage with those who are different, we enlarge our circles. There's going to be some times we're going to say some things, we're going to do some things that are dumb, that are stupid, that are ignorant. I do it all the time. Right? I was doing an interview with one of my buddies who was a blind golfer, and I was just asking questions. But the way I started, I said, hey, I'm going to ask you some questions, dude. And I may say some wrong terms, and I may say some wrong things, but I want to ask you, like, if you would help me. And I apologize if I say something wrong ahead of time. Right? You saw me model that behavior when I tried to pronounce an amazing, awesome name, right? And the person like, yeah, this is actually how you say it, right? But I said ahead of time, I'm probably gonna say this wrong. Please forgive me. But it came back like, oh, this is the actual name. She came back, or that person came back like da, right? And so like that's the way that as we go into these situations, in these moments, as we enlarge our circles, as we start thinking through not only race but other aspects of diversity and inclusion, we have to go with a humility to learn, and that we might get things wrong. But sometimes what clouds how we move forward is really our paradigm. It's our paradigm. And so I want to ask you, this is what I call the right-hand paradigm. So I want you to type into the chat. For those who are right-handed, type in right or righty. Those who are left, type in left or lefty. And those who are ambidextrous, type in ambidextrous, if you can spell it. All right, all right. Let's see. We got some rights, some rights. All right, we got some lifts. I like lifts, right? That's a little bit different than Uber. But no, lefty, right. Okay, we got a whole bunch of righties. All right, lefty, we got iPhone, left. Okay, all right. Left, all right, Alexis. Okay, all right, yeah. We have some right and left-hand people. Okay, I love it, right? Now, let me kind of share a story for you. It's interesting for me. So several years ago, I was traveling, doing like a Southern tour, and I was stopped in this store in the South, kind of like this country store, and I was shopping, getting some stuff. Look over the thing, see everybody, and I heard this guy almost yell at the top of his lungs in the store. He's like, these doors aren't made for left-handed people. And my first reaction is like, first of all, like, why is a person yelling in the middle of the store? And then my second reaction is, what is he talking about? Doors are made for left or right-handed people. They're just made for people. But it caused enough ruckus in my mind that it caused me to pay attention. And so I went and I looked, and what it looked like is like the hot dog spinner doors. If you remember those, if you ever seen them, it looked like the left-handed door opened up into nothing. Oh, excuse me, the left-handed door opened up into a refrigerator. And so it looked like as he opened the door, it kind of sprung and he hit his hand. This is why he yelled. But the right-handed door, the handle for the right hand, opened up into nothing. And it caused me to dive deeper into research. And y'all, I had no idea that left-handed people lived a whole different life than I did. I started doing research and realized that left-handed people live a different life. Like back in the day when you had to get desks, if there were any desks for left-handed people, they had to get there early, right? Just to get the few desks that were there. For my left-handed people, I want you to type into the chat some of the things that were different for you than some of your right-hand friends, right? Or your right-handed people, right? I learned that scissors that say they're multi-handed are still made for who? Right-hand people, right? Absolutely. I learned that my business colleagues, they would come to dinner meetings early so that they could sit on the edge so they weren't bumping into the person who was right-handed. I learned so many things about pens, non-smearing pens. I even learned about notebooks. I learned that spiral notebooks were the bane of their existence. Right? Cooking appliances, yeah. Left-handed scissors front, yes, right? Like I learned all of these things. Like think about it, because they're working here. It's like, oh, spiral notebooks, I hate it. I had no idea, y'all. And there's so many other things. So many other things. Some of your people said, baseball gloves. Yes, absolutely. To type instead of write to avoid smearing the writing. Absolutely, Evan. Alexis, spiral notebooks upside down every other page is not doing it. Yeah. That desks are especially an issue now. I love this. With COVID and campus taking desks out of classrooms, they take the left. Wow, I never heard that one before. That's actually a good one. Thank you so much for sharing that one. The mouse on the computer. Yes, absolutely. I've heard there have been more machine accidents with left-handed people because they're typically designed. See, oh my gosh, y'all are so on this, right? I'm right here, but one time I went to a store that sold stuff just for left-handed people. That's good. You went outside the box. It was your 6-month challenge, right? I appreciate that. But this is the interesting thing, is that sometimes we had no idea. See, I solved one of the greatest mysteries when I was doing some work with the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Office at the National Institute of Health. And there was this one lady that people just didn't get along with. And we uncovered deeper that it was because they felt she was stingy. You know why they felt she was stingy? Is because she was left-handed and she finally found a set of pens that didn't smear as she wrote. And so while everybody else was collegial and like giving the pens away, like, hey, you can have a pen, you can have a pen, everybody have a pen, right? She was like, no. It took me a long time to find these pens. And they understood because they didn't have to go through that. And y'all, I learned something super powerful, right? I love that, Emily. Fun fact, my parents are both lefties and I'm too, but they built a house just for lefties. Yes, it's actually really cool. See, I didn't know that stuff existed. And you know why I didn't? Is because I was right-handed in a society that catered to my right-handedness. I had the luxury not to have to think about it. Doors were made for me. Cabinets, scissors, books, pamphlets, mice, not mice, but mouse on computers, right? Just like the mice were made for, no. Right? But like all of these things were made for me, which caused me to believe that doesn't everybody experience it this way? And so I want to ask you, where else might you be right-handed in a society that caters to your right-handedness? See, this is not just about handedness. This is also about race. It's not just about race. This is also about gender. This is not just about gender. This is also about identity. It's not just about identity. This is also about ability. Not just about ability, it's also about mental health. It's not just about mental health, it's also about socioeconomics. It's not just about socioeconomics, it's also about education. Is that each and every single one of us has luxuries that others don't have. And the real question is when we've embraced everyday diversity, or everyday difference, is that we utilize our luxuries for the good of others. We lend a hand, pun intended, for others that don't have that same luxury. And so I ask you simply, what might be some of the luxuries you have? What are some of the luxuries that you might possess? And I'd love for you to type into the chat. Where might you be right-handed in a society that caters to your right-handedness? A couple of mine are religious luxury, right? Male and gender luxury, ability luxury, right? Identity luxury. What else might you have luxuries in your own life? All right. Instruments made for me. Absolutely, Kara. Being white in makeup industries. Yep. That only cater to light skin. That's good, Ashley. Yep. That don't experience racism. Absolutely, Sarah. Gender and race. Absolutely, Andrew. All right. I love some of the things that you all are thinking through because race. Absolutely, Alex. Right. Is that we all have luxuries. We all have these things. It's not just one group of people. It's not just one type of person. Every single one of us has luxuries. Now, in our society, sometimes those luxuries have been formed over history, and sometimes they're new. Like, y'all, we live in a misogynistic culture. It is misogynistic. When we say stuff like, I'm still learning, so I'm not like saying I'm the expert at this. When we say stuff like, oh, you throw like a girl, like we're making that sound really weak, right? Versus I loved how there was a commercial a while ago that she's like, she throws like a girl. And she was like, oh, she was killing it, right? I love that stuff because it's reframing how we think about things that we do and that we say. Too many to name, right? Healthcare, absolutely. Sexuality and race, absolutely. College education, 100%, right? And these are the things. Band-aids, I'm not sure about that one, but the luxury to have band-aids, maybe, yes, so right, right. But one of the things that I love is that as we engage and hear the luxuries that we have, we can do better for others. And you know why that's significant? It's for this guy. Now, you notice this is my son. This is Peter. And one of the things that as I started diving into the research, I learned something really powerful. I learned that Peter was left hand. Absolutely, color band-aid. Perfect. I love that. Thank you. I now understand. Like they're normally to certain skin if they're supposed to blend in. Yeah. See, I didn't even think of that, but that's super dope, right? And one of the things is my son Peter is like left-handed, right? And back in the day, he used to walk up to people with his left hand and say, "Hi," and what would they tell him? Wrong hand, right? I remember there was a time where we're at a soccer practice and the coach was trying to instruct Peter, and he was encouraging him to use his right hand with things and to put his right leg on the ball just to kind of hold it and to kind of do like this. But Peter kept struggling, like I'm struggling to stay balanced right now, and he was struggling because Peter was left-handed, and it actually took his mother kind of saying something and saying, "Hey, like." Peter's left-handed, so if you could instruct him to utilize his left foot and do things with his left hand, Peter came alive. He started kicking the ball more powerfully. He started engaging, and it appeared like he had a better time because he was empowered and he had an advocate to step up for him. And so I ask you simply, River Falls, in your communities, the places where you live and study, is where are you showing up and advocating for others? How are you listening and engaging other people that might have different luxuries or don't have the same luxuries you have? It's not just enough for us to have luxuries, but when we've embraced everyday difference, that we use it for the good of others. Right? And all this can really be pushed into this one thing that is a really standing point, and it's what I learned from the kid on the plane who wouldn't shut up. And one of the things is as I was traveling, yeah, it's very hard. That's reason for cover for you left. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some people taught it was a curse to be left-handed. And one of the things that I learned, I remember I was traveling, and I was getting ready to get on a plane. I was getting ready to go like on an 8-city tour. And the night before, I got 2 hours of sleep. Don't judge me. May have been watching Frozen. And one of the things, let it go, let it go. I've some kids, all right? And one of the things is I got on the plane. I saw this little kid who was sitting there, and he may have been like 8 or 9 years old. And he was sitting on the window seat, right? And he looked like one of those kids that had a little sign around it, like, "Hey, I'm traveling by myself, so leave me alone." Right? But he was sitting in the aisle seat, and so I came, sat in the window, as the lady sitting between us. And when I first saw this kid, I'm like, "Oh, like I know what this is. This little kid is going to do what I think he's going to do." Right? And so I sat down and I tried to go to sleep. Remember, I had 2 hours of sleep the night before. Thanks, Olaf. And I remember just sitting there, and it wasn't 10 seconds into my trying to go to sleep that this little kid just starts yapping, right? I just started yapping, right? And I'm getting frustrated because I don't have my headphones, I don't have my noise canceling Beats or whatever, Bose. I didn't have any of that in there. And so as this little kid is yapping and talking to the lady next to us, I did what every single one of us would have done in that moment. I listened. And this little kid was asking and engaging in amazing conversation. He was doing a master class in how to communicate with others. And as I listened deeply, I heard this little kid who was talking to the lady next to us, who I believe was from Laos. And this little kid was asking questions, and he engaged in these two things that are important for each and every single one of us in order to embrace everyday diversity and move from heart to hand. And he engaged with what I call courageous curiosity and authentic listening. Courageous curiosity and authentic listening. The reason I first say courageous curiosity is that he was curious enough to ask questions like what's Laos like, and like what do you plan on doing while you're here, and there's things that I should know about Laos, and he engaged in so many awesome, amazing questions. Because remember, when we were 8 or 9 years old, we asked questions like we knew nothing because we were framing the world around us. And as we've gotten a little bit older, we ask questions like we know everything, but we still know very little. And what's the number one question of kids everywhere? Type it into the chat. What's that number one question of kids everywhere? Yeah, why? Why, right? Because they want to know how something works, why it works, how do we? And some people are we there yet, right? But they want to know. Does your phone have game? Alexis, I love you. That was a good. That was a good one, Alexis. Right? That's something. Yeah, I love that. But they want to know and frame the world around them to build and ask questions that are deeper. And they had this courageous curiosity, and I think we've lost that. We've lost the art of being courageously curious about other people. But not only courageous curiosity, but this little kid was engaged and also authentic listening. Authentic listening. And the reason I say authentic versus active is that you can actually fake active listening. Did you know that? You can fake it, right? I used to teach it. So let me tell you, here's the 3 things I used to teach in order to engage in active listening. Number 1, all you had to do was repeat what the person just said to you. Oh, so what I hear you saying, Sarah, is talking Tom? No? Like that's all you had to do. Repeat what they're saying. Do you have talking Tom? No. Yeah, and I think that's what you're saying, right? That's what you do. Or the other thing, you just had to mimic the behaviors. It's really good, Andrew. Or this will get them every single time, Deanna. All you got to do is lean in. That will tell them you're really on their side. Yeah. Thank you, Sheryl Sandberg. Like all you had to do is do all those things, and you still might not be listening. Ask my kids. Not that they did that to me, but that I did that to them, right? You can do and mimic all those behaviors and still not fully engage. But he was engaged in authentic listening. And the reason I say authentic is because he was genuinely hearing and engaging her. He didn't have preconceived follow-up questions. He wasn't leading her to a place of like, I'm really going to get her here. She's going to tell me this about Laos. He was hearing her and allowing the conversation to flow. It's almost like this. And you've been, I don't know, you've been in this, where you've been in class, whether now in college or indoor high school, where you know, like when a paper was due or somebody had to read a book, you knew who read the book. We know who read the book, didn't you? It's almost like the person that says, your teacher asks a question and calls on somebody, and the person's like, well, on page one of the things that I found with the character development was really interesting. You had Mickey, and you had Minnie, and there's Donald the Duck, right? And they were all really cool people, right? And then you had the person that was like, I read page 78, and I understood that there is a parallel with chapter 8 and chapter 9. And one of the things that was really unique is how Mickey stood out in this, but Minnie overshadowed and actually was a better character in development here. And Pluto, oh my gosh, Pluto, he came out of nowhere to really show us how listening was powerful and amazing, right? All of these things. Because you knew that person read. You didn't have to question, you didn't have to guess. And we also know when people are listening to us. We also know when people are authentically hearing and experiencing what we have to say. And part of that is because, well, we know how we totally listen to other people. So I'd love for you to type into the chat, what constitutes or what shows you that somebody is truly listening to you? What shows you that someone is authentically listening? I love Disney too, Grace. Yes. Eye contact, absolutely, Kendall. Yep. Zach, Kendall. Facial reactions. Eye contact. When they ask questions, eye contact, paraphrasing. Yeah, asking follow-up questions. Yep. Relating to it. Yes. Remember what I talked about after? Oh, that's a really good one, Karina. Remembering what I talked about after the conversation. Coming back to it. That's a really, really good one. Dedicating time to answer and add a concept to respond with. Yes. Yeah. Bringing the conversation a day later. Yep. Thank you, iPhone. That's really good. Applying what I said later in life. That's really good. I love that. I love, you know what's interesting? I'm sorry, a little side note. I haven't seen a lot of Samsung like names for people when they call it. It's usually just iPhone. There's a whole different story, right? We need some more diversity. But one of the things that I love and appreciate is that, like, when we really listen, like I once had this mentor in my life that did something I'm still trying to master. I haven't learned how to do it yet. I'm still trying. I've tried it a couple times. It feels uncomfortable. This is what he does. If he's talking to someone, it doesn't matter who else is around. He never loses focus on that person. He stops and listens. And people do this all the time. And I watch people as I'm watching, because he's a person that speaks before people, and people want to come up, and people want to go, all right, I'll see you later. I'll see you later, James. I'll see. And normally, what do we do? Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'll talk to you later. But you know what he does? He stays focused. And people see all the stuff happening around them, and they've grown to appreciate it. Now, initially, people may say, he didn't say goodbye to me. But what he's modeling, when he modeled to me, was that when you're really listening to someone, you're not looking around to see who else is there, who you're saying goodbye to, but you're really fully engaged with that person. And unfortunately, what I've found in the research and experience is that most of us communicate with what I call a double Dutch style communication. That's how we communicate. Oh, you don't know what double Dutch is? Oh, let me tell you. So single rope is like this. Double Dutch is like two ropes. It's like, and there's somebody waiting to jump in like this. All right. And then they finally jump in and they're like, all right. And they're like, That's double Dutch, right? And most of us, we communicate in a double Dutch style of communication. We're waiting for the person to take a pause, take a breath, take a pause, take a breath, take a pause. And this is why I disagree with you. Right? And that's how most people communicate in a double Dutch style of communication. And so where I'm challenging people, Shelby, is to listen to what I call the power of three. The power of three. And one of the things that I love, and Shelby as a friend, I appreciate that. One of the things that I love is that most of us, we only listen to the power of one or the power of two, right? Power of one or power of two. Let me put it like this. Like, hey, how you doing, Rachel? Oh, I'm good. Oh, I'm good too. That's power of one. Power of two. Oh, how you doing, Rachel? Oh, I'm good. Oh, what made you good? Oh man, I heard this crazy bald head speaker. Oh, I remember when I heard that bald speaker. Power of two. Power of three. Hey, how you doing, Rachel? Oh, I'm good. Like, what made you good? Oh, I heard this crazy bald head speaker. Oh, for real? Like, what you learned about? Oh, and I learned about diversity and inclusion and how to utilize my luxuries for the good of others and all these kind of things. For real, like, is there something else that I should learn? Do you see what just happened there? It's that I listened at least into the third level of the conversation. But most of us stop at the power of one or power of two because we can't wait to get it back to who? Absolutely, Shelby. Ourselves. We can't wait to get it back to ourselves. And so I want to encourage and challenge you to listen to the power of three. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do a quick breakout room, and I'm going to give you some opportunities just to practice, right? So if you are able to, please turn your videos on. If you're unable to turn your videos on, at least as you go into the rooms, unmute yourself. You might have some people that had left for a quick second, decided that they didn't like my shirt and just left, but kept their thing on, whatever. So I'm going to try to put 4 or 5 of you in a room. If you have any problems, just hit me up. But I'm gonna give you some time to practice. But when you practice listening to the power of three, I want you to listen and ask this question. Right? And I'll put it into the chat because it's hard to see. Ooh. Okay, but essentially this question simply asks is what has been a major moment in your life that has shaped who you are today? What's been a major moment in your life that shaped who you are today? Right? And so I want to give you an opportunity to practice that to the power of three within your breakout rooms. And we'll come back, hit this last point, and then we'll end out. So, all right, I'll put you in the breakout rooms. All right. Thank you, Sally. I appreciate that. All right, and I'm assign manually. Boom, boom. All right, cool. All right. So go to your breakout rooms, have fun. Boom, and you will have 10 minutes. But have conversation. Utilize the time. Don't come back early. Like, we already asked all the questions, but have genuine dialogue and conversation. But ask people and engage. And what's been a major moment in their life that shaped who they are today? All right, you may begin. Danny or Reason, let me know if you aren't able to get into a room. Jackson Mack. I think I hear you, Jackson. Can I hear myself? All right. If you can chat me, just let me know if I'm able to put you into a room. And Jackson Mackley, if you can type in join room. Okay. Understand. Thank you, Jackson. You are perfectly fine. I definitely understand. I appreciate that, Jackson. I'm going to challenge you while you're at work, before you leave work, to practice the power of three. So listening to the third level of conversation. It could be with a fellow coworker, or it could be a customer, but listen to the power of three. So you can get that same practice even at work.
Hey, Alex, let me know if you need to be put into a group or not. Actually, I see you might need to. Okay, sending you to a group now. Just a little bit. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Find out what it means to me. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. My name is Justin C. All right. All right. Okay. So what I'd love for you to do is type into the chat what that experience was like for you. What that experience was like for you. Both good and bad, right? It feels uncomfortable, type uncomfortable, feels great, it was awesome. I'd love for you to share what that experience was like for you. All right.
Yes, I can hear them both.
And I will mute everybody. All right, cool. All right, that's good. Okay. Felt great to meet new people. Absolutely good. Made me smile. Informational, good but awkward. Yep. That's what a lot of people say about me. Like, he's good, but he's awkward. I met some cool people that have some stuff in common with. Everyone was very kind and listened well. It was fun. It was great to talk with some new peeps. It was really good to get to talk to some people, hear about their important life events. Some of them are super awesome. Good to share a connection. I like having the opportunity to share. I can listen to stories. Yeah, this is great. I love it. Starting was really bad and had silence for a few minutes, right? Yeah, that happens often. So that's a good normal response. Nice to hear about experiences. Awesome. I love talking with folks and finding important life events in common. Not good, but it made me better. That's good. I appreciate it, Elizabeth. Like I love, and everybody responds to this differently, right? Now, I asked you to ask a really big question. Wasn't this a big question? Like, what has been a major moment in your life that shaped who you are today? That's a really big question. What I'm not asking you to do, right? You didn't know what to talk about. Sorry. I could have retyped that into the message, so I take full responsibility. And I think it's Arjun Bala. I think that's how I'm going to get it right before the end of this presentation. A lot of people get my name wrong, so it's very intentional for me. But Arjun is fine. Okay, that's perfect. Awesome. But before this presentation, don't leave today without me knowing how to say your name. I want to hear it actually from you because it's a big deal for me. Sorry. A lot of us said travel, important event, such a fun connection. That's good. Okay, I love this. Right? Because this question is a big question. What I'm not asking you to do, I'm not asking you to come up to people and be like, hey, so what's been a major moment in your life that shaped who you are today? Yeah. Because people may run from you, right? So I'm not asking you to do that. What I am asking you to do is to engage and hear people. And yes, there are times where we can ask really, really deep questions, right? We can ask deep questions. And I think for people in our circles, our friends, our families, like sometimes I've done this when we're able to do this live, and people have thought, like, I've known this person for 10 years and had no idea. And what that says to me is that we often don't ask deep questions. And the thing I realize is that when we ask surface level questions, what should we actually expect in response? Yeah, surface level answers. And that's the unique thing. And you know what's amazing is that when we deeply listen to others, we often get these powerful questions that people are communicating, but most of us don't take the time to really deeply listen and hear what other people are saying. We don't. So imagine you say, hey, like, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I went home and spent some time with my family. We stop and we say, oh, wow, man. Like, I remember when I went home, or like, I went home last week, or you see what just happened? I brought it back to me. Versus you have a great opportunity where someone has shared something. And it's like, wow, like, you go home often? Like, yeah, like, I really enjoy my family and stuff like that. Like, man, you see another question there? Wow, like, are you and your family really close? Has it always been that way? Or it's like, and they're like, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But when you feed off their responses, when we're authentically listening, we often are able to get to these deep places, but it takes us really intentionally focusing. Now, what I'm not saying as well, the opposite extreme is where you're like, Deanna, tell me where you wear glasses. Oh, for real? Like, did you always grow up with glasses? For real? Like, what's your sight? What's your vision? Are you nearsighted? Are you far? Like, no, don't do that, right? It's not an interrogation. But what it is, it allows us to really dive into other people. And then, at least after the third level, we can then dive in and do a deeper connection. That's really what this is about. There's no like exact science to this, right? But what you should do is at least get to the third level. And for my people who are like the perfectionists, I don't want you to get a piece of paper and like 1, 2, 3. Okay, I can talk now. But to really take the moment just to really practice. It's going to be awkward initially, I promise you. When I first started challenging myself to listen to the power of 3, it initially was extremely awkward. But as I really began doing it, it just became a natural part of who I am. You know, one of the most powerful 3 words that you can actually operate with the power of 3 is tell me more. Yeah, tell me more. All right. I love this. Oh yeah, Ashley. Yeah, so we can't force anybody to talk at the end of the day. We can just give people opportunity. There's gonna be some people that they're like, nobody's ever listened to me like this before. What's your angle? Right? Like there's just people who do that because we're so used to not genuinely authentically listening to people that some people are gonna be like, why do you want to know? Like, how was your day? Good. And I may say, oh, like what made it good? Like that's one of the things that I normally will ask. Like, hey, what made it good? Like, or if people come to me and used to say, hey, Justin, really enjoyed your presentation. My typical response was, what did you enjoy about it? Like, I think, thank you, but like, what did you enjoy? Because I wanted to get to something of more depth so I can better understand, like, oh, I really liked your interaction, or I like when you did this, because that helps me to make sure I continue doing it. So if somebody says, hey, like, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm good. Oh, like, yeah, what made it good? Now, there's some people who don't want to engage. Well, life. Okay, cool. Like I'm done, right? Like I'm not gonna force you or pry you open to tell me. But oftentimes when we consistently are that person that shows people how that we're open to listen, that people are able to engage. So really, really great question, Grace. Ashley, excuse me. So this last piece is really around allyship. All right. And this last one I really want to dive into, and I want to be open and honest about because we're having a discussion about race. Oftentimes I can use this and talk about the handed approach. But one of the things that we have to ask ourselves as we develop into becoming allies for others is how to be an anti. And when I'm talking about being anti, you can be anti anything. You can be an anti-handist, anti-sexist, anti-homophobic, anti-racist, all of these things. There's so many different antis, culturalist, whatever it may be. But I want to utilize this analogy to help us think through it. Now, this analogy initially came from Dr. Beverly Tatum when she was talking about privilege. And one of the things that I was inspired by it and adopted it to talk through about how to be an anti. Now, because you all are focused in on race, I'm going to utilize anti-racism as a framework to think about this. But oftentimes with organizations, I talk about being an anti-handist that people can put in fill in the blank of what makes the most sense. So what I've identified is that, Dr. Beverly Tatum talked about is that there's certain people who are on the walkways. We talk about those like when we have the right-hand paradigm, that the systems in place in our society are designed for them. And so imagine if you've ever been at an airport or even an escalator, right? And things are moving forward, that there's some people who are on the escalator and some people are taking the steps, right? There's some people on the moving walkway and there's some people over here. And it's not just because they want to get a good exercise, but this little contraption is actually moving people forward. And what I found is that there's 4 different types of people. So I'm going to walk through briefly those 4 different types of people. Right? These the first type of people are actual racists. Right? These are the people who they block. I call them the blockers. That they block people from getting on any type of escalator or moving walkway because of their race. Or if we're talking about handed, because they're different hand. Right? Like I'm right-handed. You're not getting on because you're left-handed. I need only right-handed people with me today. And they block people from getting on because of the race, right? Now, they're making sure that other people aren't able to get on, and they may congregate together. And I prefer people to hear, right? I don't want people to be racist, but at least I know when people are, right? So I'm like, okay, cool, right? You don't like me because I'm black. All right. At least I know. I don't have to guess or wonder or, I do believe in our society that we throw this term around at times a little bit more liberally than we should. And because everybody's not racist, but some people are able to engage in the systems that might operate in support of one race. So what some people will call systemic racism or other kind of things, right? So the racist, part 1, number 1, right? The second type of person are the unconscious non-racist. And unconscious non-racist these are the people who I call them the movers. Like they aren't doing anything to block people. They want everybody to be able to get on to the moving walkway, but they're also wondering why people aren't taking full advantage of the walkway. They're like, wait a minute, this is a walkway, just walk faster. And to be honest, in real life, that's who I am. When I would go on to airports and planes, I'd be wondering, like, why is this person stopping, right? Like, they just need to get out of my way because I need to walk with my big luggage. And so one of the things is that these are people that they're not engaged with doing things that are racist, right? They're not calling people negative names, or they're not saying, hey, like, because you're this race, you don't belong, or you're inferior. But they're also utilizing the systems, and they're continuing to move. The third group of people are the conscious non-racist. Now, conscious non-racists, they also aren't doing anything engaged in racist behavior, but they've also now seen, their eyes have been open to see that things have been happening to people who are different, right? Now, in the case of racism, things are happening to people who are different race, right? That Black and brown people might be treated differently in this type of situation than in others, or this group or that group, right? They're fully aware, and they say, you know what? It's not right. I hate this. I'm going to stop moving. But what's happening? The moving walkway is still moving them forward because there's systems and policies, laws that might still be moving them forward, even though they're conscious of it, and even though they're not engaged in any specific outright racist behaviors. And the fourth group is where we're all called to, right? And when I talk about we're all called to, again, in any different facet of life, true allies are not just anti-racist, but anti-sexist or anti-homophobic or anti-whatever it may be. But these are the people who go against the moving walkway. Like, if you ever saw somebody go the wrong way, and you're like, what is this person doing? This is the wrong way. But they're going against the grain to bring other people on the walkway, or to dismantle the walkway altogether. And when you're anti, you start doing things that might look to others like you're going the wrong way. You shouldn't be saying that, right? You may go to Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas, and family members may say certain things. And I'm not a big believer in calling out people in front of other people. That's not my thing, right? But when you have a private conversation, you're like, hey, like, that joke wasn't funny, or like, that's when some people come to you and say, you're going the wrong way, right? You're doing too much. I hear that often, right? But when we're anti, that we really step up and stand up for other people. Let me give you one that doesn't deal directly with racism. So, I'm trying my hardest to be an anti-sexist. And I was speaking for a company that had 4 of us speakers, and they had some racial diversity part of it. 2 African Americans or Black people, and there's 2 white people, but they were all men. And I remember the uncomfortable conversation I'd have with my client that's paying me to say, like, hey, this next year, it might be like, I've noticed that this panel is all men, right? And we're not talking about manhood, we're talking about leadership and purpose. And I was like, hey, like, I think it might be helpful to have a voice or several voices that are not male. And hey, even if it costs me, because this is my 2nd year in a row, I was like, hey, even if it has to be one of my spots, I understand. Because it's important to have this voice there. Like, my friends, that's allyship. Right? That's where we've stepped up and helped and supported other people. And this is hard. True allyship actually costs us something. There's risk involved, and it's for the right reasons. It's not because I feel guilty. I don't want anybody to do anything because they feel guilty. But it's true allyship because you feel that it's the right thing to do. Now, let me give you some practical ways to be an ally and do what I call become a beginner ally, right? Now, part of this is that we have to ask around us, like, who are the people that aren't represented, that aren't being listened to? Who are the people that might be marginalized, or their voices may not be heard, not be seen. One way to begin to do that as we engage, and even though I call this the 3x3x3 model, I've now upped this to call the 3x5 framework, is I ask, starting off with, who are 3 people you can talk to in that group? Are there 3 movies, podcasts, book articles, right? And potentially, what's the piece? Yeah, the podcast episodes, movies, episodes, like all these things, like 3x5. And so when you ask the question, first start off with the people, because we need the heart, and we need to be able to engage and hear the perspective of other people, and hear them, hear their story, hear their journey. Ask to hear, like, hey, what's it like being, South Asian at River Falls? Or what's it like being Black? Or what's it like being a woman? Or what's it like being, a person with a disability? Like, you ask different questions to be true allies, but you need to be able to hear and listen first to what other people are saying. Right now, obviously, my hope is that you actually have relationship with people. Remember, we have to go backwards. Don't start off your first conversation with somebody like, hey, Justin, I noticed you're Black. Do you mind sharing what it's like being Black at River Falls? Like, no, no. I hope that you see me as a person first, right? That you engage and say, Alexa, I see that you love butterflies. Like, tell me about your butterfly, right? Like have genuine conversation with people to be fully engaged. And then we can ask and dive into some of the tougher questions. So if you're asking, hey, Justin, what do I do first? Enlarge your circles. First, just start getting to know people who are different. Don't go immediately into, hey, I noticed your ex. But build relationship. Build trust. Then start asking questions. As you're able to build a relationship and trust, it may take a month or 2 months to be able to say, hey, like, are there people already in your life where you currently are that you can ask these questions, that you have friendships with, relationships with, that you might not have been able to ask these questions to before? But like, hey, like, what's it like being Black in America? And hear their stories, hear the perspective, right? Then identify ways that they can help you identify, are there 3 books, are there podcast episodes, articles, or movies, right? TED Talks, these other kind of things that can help you. Now, the reason I don't ask you to stop at one is because, like, the same person, I could talk to one person and get a very different perspective, and one person doesn't represent the whole race, one person doesn't represent the whole gender or the sexual identity or all those kind of things. But 3 is a good starting point to become what's called a beginner ally. But you can easily say, hey, you know what? I just want to start off with 1x5. So you might identify one person, and then from them, you might get what are some good movies or articles or books or podcast episodes or journal articles to be able to engage. But this is a really practical way to begin. Now, what I'm not trying to do is, this is not a process. Not a process. It's a continuum. It continues. But it's a really great starting point. And at the end of the day, realizing that when you really are an ally, it never stops because you're constantly showing up for other people. So my question for you is, how will you see this? All right. How will you take even this conversation? What will be your attitude and actions going forward? Many of us, we look at this glass. Some of us were like, oh, the glass is half full. Some of us say, hey, the glass is half empty. But I remember years ago, this speaker came to our organization, and it's like, if you could just see the glass as half full, your life would change, it'd be amazing. And I was like, dude, that doesn't work. But I remember looking at this glass that was half whatever, some clear liquid. It may have been water. I was 25. And I was like, glass, half full, willing to try anything. And something hit me. It's like, Justin, why are you asking, is the glass half empty or half full when you can fill the glass back up? And my friends, that is our call to action. Right? It's not where you are now. Do you see the glass of diversity, inclusion, or race, all these kind of things that's half empty or half full? The question is, how will you fill your glass and others' glasses around you back up? It's so easy to have people in our society that talk, but it takes great leaders to actually take that picture and fill the glass back up. So I ask you, what actions will you take? I'd love for you, as we transition and we bring back, at least in the great leadership team, to type into the chat one practical takeaway that you can take from this presentation? Whether it's having more inviting behaviors, whether it's understanding and assessing both your intent and impact, asking the 2 power questions in terms of, can I give you feedback, and assuming that they had good intent? Is it listening to the power of 3? Right? Is it utilizing your luxuries for the good of others at River Falls and in your community? Or is it simply saying, hey, you know what? I want to understand somebody who's different, and I want to begin my journey to becoming a beginner ally. I'd love for you to type in the chat one thing that you would like to take away from this presentation today. One thing that you will do. All right. Take a quick 30 seconds. This is good. All right. Love, be more inviting, listening to Power 3. Understand how to be a good listener in conversation is good, Karina. Power 3, utilizing my privileges. Awesome, Shelby. Actually listen to people and stories that they have to share. That's great, Grace. Power 3. Yep. I'll speak up. Speak of people who don't get to. Powerful, really powerful stuff, y'all. Be more focused on talking. Yes, I think listen to others. This is good. This is really good, y'all. You know what I love about this? All right. Listening more to people, utilize my privileges. I love that, Precious. 2 power questions, Power 3. That's good. What I love about this is no matter where you are, you can grow. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. Right? I've been studying this stuff for 10 years. No matter where we are, no matter where you are today, no matter how uncomfortable you are, there's still an opportunity to grow. So with all being said, I love, and what we'll do is we'll provide a list of resources. So if you want to dive in deeper to some of the content, we'll provide that. But I created 7 mini episodes of Everyday Diversity series that really walk through this presentation in bite-sized chunks, like 8 to 10 minutes. And I'll make sure we have the link before we get off, but we'll also provide these additional resources. I'll provide books and things, podcasts, and things that might be of interest to help dive deeper into some of these topics. And so I'd love to stay connected with you. Again, I'm Justin at workmeaningful.com. You can reach me at iWorkMeaningful, all these places. Prefer LinkedIn, but I'm also on the gram, YouTube, all those great places. And can you do me a huge favor? Is can you give a big round of applause, type in great job to Sarah Peters, Elise, the whole leadership team that have helped put this on and help to make sure that we're growing together. And so thank you so much, River Falls. Y'all are so dope, amazing. Please stay connected. Please email me, hit me up on social media. Tell me if you disagree with something. I'm perfectly fine with that. You want to dive deeper and all that good stuff. So thank y'all so much. Y'all are so dope. And bring back Elise or Sarah Peters. One of y'all come back and close us out. Woo! And give somebody some prize. I didn't get it.
Yeah, we got some prizes. I'm gonna put my prizes in the chat. The link in the chat to sign up for those socks. But keep the good vibes going for Justin. We really want to thank you for spending the last. I feel like it's been a month, but it's been about a month. Spending the last 2 sessions with us and just really breaking it down in engaging in bite-sized chunks. So I feel so honored to have had that conversation with all of you on the Zoom. Because again, Zoom can be weird, and I really have enjoyed this, and I appreciate you for your skill and craft and sharing it with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You'll be getting an email from me, everyone, if you do sign up in that link. There'll be more details as to how to get your socks. Have a great night. Stay connected. Our next event for the We Are Falcons Value Series, a focus on race, will be November 11th, and it's a spoken word artist. So look out for that on our social media. Y'all are great.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks,
Bye.
Justin.
Woo! Yeah.
Get it.